In today's video, I want to give you a simple project to work on that will help you get started in no code. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Connor, and on this channel I help people set up their online businesses using no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable and Zapier. Now over the last few months I've been making quite a few advanced tutorials to kind of show you how things with the Unicorn Factory work, but a little bit of feedback that I received from a few people was that oftentimes those tutorials are not particularly great for anyone just getting into no-code. And I completely agree. So that is why I have decided that today I am going to show you a tutorial or a project that you can work on if you are brand new to all of the tools. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be building a pre-launch landing page for your startup idea, and then we are going to use Zapier to send all of the form submissions of people who might be interested in using your platform all the way to Airtable. Not just is this a great way to learn how Webflow, Airtable and Zapier work, this is also a fantastic way to see how much interest you can gather for your startup idea before actually going out and building your prototype. So a lot of startups actually got their start using exactly this method, which is to basically build a pre-launch landing page explaining what their idea does, what the value of it all is, and then they used email signups as a way to gauge how much interest there actually is in the platform. Now this is something that Joel from Buffer did when he started his social media scheduling platform Buffer.com, and that is ultimately what inspired this particular tutorial today. Now given that this will be your first time using Webflow, Airtable and Zapier, don't worry if it takes a little bit of time to kind of wrap your head around how all of it works. Again, it's just muscle memory. The more often you practice, the better you'll get at it. But if you get through this particular tutorial, you'll be at a point where you understand the basics of how those tools work together, and that really lays the foundations for you to end up building entire prototypes like the Unicorn Factory. But before we get into it, you know what I'm gonna ask. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, then please like this video. It helps spread the word, and it also lets me know that you want me to make more of these particular videos. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to say straight off the bat is that this will not be a Webflow masterclass. I'm going to show you how to build one particular section that will allow you to add a form to basically sell your value proposition, and it will kind of be a good place to start without having to get overwhelmed with all the different types of layouts that there are. But I'll be linking some resources to where you can learn a bit more about building different things inside of Webflow. So once you have got this first initial section set up, you can then also go and expand on it just by watching all of those different videos. So assuming you have now got your Webflow account set up and you have started your new project, then what we're going to do is we're going to start on the home page. I'm going to start on a separate page only because I'm going to be putting this particular landing page on my already existing website. So the landing page that I am going to be building is going to be for a Webflow, Airtable, Zapier beginner class that I thought, you know what, because this is what it's about in this video, I thought appropriately I should also create a landing page for it. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be starting to set that up inside of Webflow now. So if you are in here, what we want to do is we want to start off by creating the overall layout and structure of this particular page. So the way that you can use Webflow is you can go over to the left side where that big plus button is, and when you click it, you'll see that there are a whole bunch of elements that you can use to then populate the white canvas that's in the middle of the screen. So I always start off by just adding a section, and then in order to make sure that all of the content doesn't go all the way out to the edges, what I do is I drop a container inside of that section. So that should look something like this so far, and if you've made it this far, fantastic. The next thing that I want to do is I want to put a grid in there that allows me to have two different columns on this particular home section or hero section. So the way that you do that is just jump in here, and under the layout tab you'll have section, container, grid and columns available. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the grid button. Now as soon as you've created the grid, you'll see that it automatically generates a 2x2 grid, but in my particular example I only need 2 columns but I don't need 2 rows. So the way that you can change that is over on the right side you can go to the style panel, and the style panel is used to basically design different elements, and what I can do here is just click on the edit grid button, and then it will tell me how many columns I have. So in this case it says 2 columns, which I can see here, 1 and 2, and it also says 2 rows, row 1, row 2. Now all I need to do now in order to remove that second row is just click on the remove button. And now we can see we have 2 columns, 1 row, and that is exactly where we want to go. So the next thing that I want to do now is I want to drop 2 div blocks into this particular grid, and div blocks are essentially wrappers that hold the different content. So what I'm going to be doing is I am going to just go over here and then I'm going to click on div block. Now, before I actually move on, you can probably see that it says grid 11 in here. What I want to do is I actually want to start off by naming my different elements in a way that is intuitive for me to understand, but also intuitive to others to understand if they ever jumped into this project and wanted to make changes to the layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this grid 11 and I'm going to rename it to 2-column grid. And so using names like that is just a really good way to make sure that people who end up looking at the structure of your page have a good understanding of what these different elements are. Another big pro of using good naming conventions like that is that you'll be able to reuse it in case you ever want to create another section that has a 2-column grid. So back to the div block. Now, if I click on the 2-column grid element and then drop in the div block, it will automatically fill the first column. Now, if I want to add another div block, what it will do is it will automatically drop this div block into the next available column. So now I have these 2 div blocks in here, which I'm going to be using as my content wrapper. And the idea that I have for these 2 div blocks is to have the content in the first one and then a video in the second one. In fact, I might actually put this video right here into that particular div block. So the way I can add the video element to this div block is just by going over again to the elements panel and then scrolling down to where it says video. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on video, and then what it will do is it will ask you to add a URL. Now, because I haven't uploaded this video yet, I won't be able to add it just yet, but all I would need to do is just get my YouTube link and just drop it in here, and then that video will automatically load whenever someone visits the web page. So a very important thing to do in your hero sections is to basically lay out what the value is that you are going to be providing to your customer when they visit your website. So because mine is all about helping people get started in no code, I'm going to use exactly that as my title. So all I need to do is just click on the plus button, scroll down to where it says heading, and then I'll just drop a heading into my div block. So I'm going to change this heading to the ultimate guide to Airtable, Webflow, and Zapier. Again, not a copywriting masterclass. I might change it in the future, but you kind of get the idea. Then what I want to do next is below my main section, what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a description of what it's all about. So I'm just going to go in here, add a paragraph, and I'm going to quickly describe what this course is about. Want to learn how to build no-code prototypes but not quite sure where to start? Learn in a DIY course how to build a simple landing page for your website in Webflow, build a CRM in Airtable, and automate some key workflows with Zapier. So I am definitely going to make changes to this in the future, but then what we want to do is we want to collect people's email addresses in case they are interested. So the way that we can do that is we can just scroll down to the form block, click on the form block, and what that will do is it will automatically create a form for you with your name, email address, and a submit button. So I'm just going to remove the name label and the name text field for now by just clicking on the delete button when they are selected, and that will leave us with the email address and a field where your website visitors can submit their email address. So I want to change the name of the button from submit to sign up for updates. So all you need to do is just double click on it. That will then open up the form settings tab, and then you can already see in here it says button text submit. All you need to do then is just change it for sign up for updates. Now, obviously, this is not an amazingly detailed landing page, but what you could do now is you could add additional sections with things that they're going to learn. Because I haven't invested a lot of time into thinking about how something like this could work, I don't really have the content to add. But what I want to show you now is I want to show you how you can now style this particular section inside of Webflow. So what we want to do is we want to start off by changing the background to a slightly different color than the white. So the way that we can do that is we come over here and we start off by giving our section a class name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this here dark section. Now, the reason why I give it class names is because if I ever want to reuse a section with the same settings, then I can do that by just reusing that class name on that particular element. Then what you can do is if you want to change your background, scroll down on the right side to the background section, click on it, and then in there you can pick whatever color you want. Now, I've already got a few brand colors set up, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that. Now, you can obviously see that now all of the text is very hard to read because it is black on a dark background. So what you can do now also is you can just go to the color section of this particular section and change it from the color free to white, which is F. Okay, so the next thing that I might want to do is I might want to change the color of my button. So again, if you want to style an element on your page, just click on that element, and then you'll see that on the right side, it automatically selects that element and it allows you to style it. So the first thing that we always have to do when we want to style a brand new element is give it a class name. So I'm going to call this particular button the submit button. So now again, all I need to do is just go to the different sections and make the changes that I want. So I'm going to just change the color of this button from blue to red. Beautiful. And then another thing that I want to do is I actually want my text to be all capitalized, and I also want to make it bold. So all you need to do is just jump over to the typography section, and then under letter spacing you'll see the capitalized field. So all you need to do is click on the all caps field, and then all we need to do is just scroll up to our font and then just select the weight of the font. So in my case I'll use 700. And then another thing that I might want to add is I just want to add a little bit of space between the sign up form field and the actual button. And the way that I can do that is by adding some spacing. Now there are two types of spacing. First of all, you have margin, and margin kind of pushes other elements away. And then you have padding, and padding just adds additional space inside. So if I added padding, you'd see that it actually adds that additional space inside of the button. Whereas if I added margin to the top, it actually just pushes it away from the next element that is above it. So I'm just going to make this here 30 pixels, and that is pretty much fine. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to add a little bit of margin below my actual heading. So I'm just going to click on my heading, and again, first thing that we need to do is we need to give it a class name. So I'm going to call this the hero title. Now you'll see that inside of my project already some options come up, and these here are existing classes. Now an important lesson to know about using classes inside of Webflow is if you want to reuse a specific setting that you have for a particular element, you can do so with class names. So if I click on hero title, you'll see that the weight of the font has changed, and that is because I actually have a different element on my website that has the title hero title, and that basically means that whenever I reuse the settings of that class, it will automatically apply those settings to whatever I apply. So in this case, I actually am quite happy with leaving it as it is. Using the same class names across different elements adds a nice consistency to your website, and so I'm happy to just keep it as it is. The next thing, maybe style the hero paragraph a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and call this class hero paragraph. And again, I already have an existing class for that. So if I click on that, I can see that it goes gray. Now, not ideal if you have a background like this, but I do actually like the sizing of the font. So one thing that you can do, if you already have a class that you like, but you just want to make some minor changes to that particular paragraph. Now, instead of just going ahead and changing the color of this particular font, which would then change it on all the other different pages as well, and you definitely don't want to do that because there is probably a reason why you chose this color, what you can do is you can use something called combo classes. And combo classes are basically subclasses that basically allow you to make some minor changes to your existing class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a combo class that allows me to make this particular font white. So just click on behind hero paragraph, and then I'm just going to write font white. Now, as soon as I add that particular combo class to my element, it won't automatically make that change. But what I can do then is I can now scroll down and I can just change the color of the font to white. And now it's already starting to look like something. Now, one thing that's bugging me a bit is that on my website, if I click on the preview button, you'll see that there's a huge section down here that is still white, and I don't want my website to look like that because it kind of looks weird. So what I'm going to do is I am going to jump in here and I'm going to again click on my dark section. Now, what I can do is I can either add some padding to my section by just going in here and clicking on the 40 at the top and the bottom, or option number 2, I can actually just give this particular section a defined height by just adding it down here to the height section. Now, if you want to add a height to a section, then what I recommend doing is actually giving it a combo class so that you can then reuse the dark section styling on different elements in the future. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go up here again to where it says dark section, and we're going to add a combo class. And so I'm going to call this combo class full page. And what that will indicate to me is that this particular section is a full page section. And then all you need to do is just type in the height, and the height is 100 VH. Now, VH is basically something that you can use to tell the browser how high your section is relative to the viewport of a particular user. So if someone is looking at it on a phone, basically what you're saying is, I want this particular section to be 100% in height of that particular device that they are using. And so that allows you to be a lot more flexible across multiple different device sizes. Now, another thing that I'm not a huge fan of, if I am completely honest, is that my entire section actually sits quite at the top. So what I want to do is I want to just shift this entire section here more towards the middle of the page. So the way that I can do that is just by jumping in here and changing the layout. So where you can say see display from what is currently set, which is display block, to display flex. So if I click on that, it will then allow me to basically change the alignment of the different elements. So I'm just going to change it to center. And now you can see that it moves the entire element into the center of the page. Now, again, not a design masterclass. I feel like if I add additional sections, I'll move it up a bit. But for now, this does the trick. So the next thing that we'll want to do is we will want to move over to the next stage, which is testing form submissions. So the way that you can do that is you can just jump in here and publish your site. And once you have published your site, you'll actually be able to go to that particular landing page, and you'll have a URL with the particular slug that you created. And now what we want to do is we just want to test putting in our email address. So I'm just going to put in connor@unicornfactory.nz. Now, as soon as that happens, you'll see that a little message comes up that says, thank you, your submission has been received. Obviously, that doesn't look great. If you want to style it, the way that you can do it is just click on your form element and then click onto the settings element. And then inside of that settings element, switch the state from normal to success. And then again, you can just jump in here and style it in whatever way you like. So again, you just go in here, you can go and click on the success message field, type in the class name. So I'm just going to call this success message. And then I have a combo class for this, which is called green. Nice. And so this will do the trick for now. But again, you have more time. Feel free to style it to your delight and basically make your landing page look appealing to anyone who might want to sign up to try your platform as soon as you have built it. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is where those form submissions are sent when someone submits their email address. So all you need to do is click on project settings, and then in your project settings, click on forms. And then you'll see inside of the form sections that all of your form submission data is sent there. And you can see right there at the bottom that it says connor@unicornfactory.nz, which is the form that I submitted. Now, one recommendation that I have if you're using multiple forms on your website is to actually name that particular form something that makes sense. So I'm going to name my form beginner course form. That way you'll be able to separate out the different people that submit different forms on your website, and it will be easy to basically contact them with the relevant information as soon as you're ready to launch your platform. And so that is the first part of the job done. Obviously, we only built one particular section for this landing page, but I'll be linking some resources in the description down below where you can learn how to build additional sections for things like features, benefits, testimonials, and all those types of things. And just adding those sections to your site will definitely increase the chances of people signing up to your pre-launch list. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to build out our little pre-launch list using a tool called Airtable. Now, the reason why we want to obviously build this list is because then when you're ready to actually get your product to market, then you can actually contact people who have already expressed interest, and that just helps a lot with getting traction and building momentum a lot faster. So just start off by going over to Airtable, create an account, and then add a new base. Now, when you add your new base, you should start off with something like this. Now, I've created a new table for my beginner course leads, but yours will probably be empty at this point, which means that all of these other tabs will be missing. No big deal. All you need to do is just go ahead and then rename your table to whatever it is that you want to name it, and then you'll be good to go to start. So all we are collecting here is email addresses. So all you need to do is really just change this first field from name to email. So the way that you can do that is just by clicking on customize field type and then change the name from name to email. And then another thing that you can do is you can actually change the type of field. So at the moment it's a single line text, and what we want to change it to is email. So now the idea is whenever someone submits that form on your website, that their email address just automatically gets added here, so that over time you can build this huge list of people that you can get in touch with for launch. Now, one other thing that I recommend doing is also adding a new field at the end for a date and time when the record was created. That gives you a real good idea of when you have certain types of spikes and signups. So I'm just going to call this field created, and then in the find a field type section, I'm just going to go ahead and type in created. And what it will do is it will give you two options. One is the created by field, which basically tells you who the person was that added that record, but the one that we want to use is the created time field. And what that will do is it will automatically tell you when that particular record was created. So in my case, it's got all of the dates when the original records were moved in there, but you'll see in just a second when we send all of this information from Webflow to Airtable that it actually tells you what the actual time was that the person submitted their email address. Now, one last thing that you could do is just remove all of the unnecessary fields that you don't need. So we'll remove notes, we will remove attachments, and we'll also remove the status field. So now I obviously showed you where you can go ahead and find all of your email addresses that are submitted on your website, but obviously what we want to do is we want to start automating some of these workflows, because as soon as you start automating them, there is less error that happens, and also you don't actually have to spend the time actually manually writing in what the email addresses is. Now you could obviously at the end also export the CSV file of all of the records that were submitted through Webflow, but this is just a really great example of how you can use no-code tools to send data between the different platforms. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how you can get all of those email submissions from Webflow to Airtable. So I use a tool called Zapier, and Zapier is a tool that allows you to send data between all these different apps that you use. So I'm pretty sure that you have over 2,000 apps that you can integrate with. So if you already have a selection of tools that you enjoy using, then you can actually just integrate it with that. So if, for example, you're using something like HubSpot or even Google Sheets and you don't really want to use Airtable, then just go ahead and use Zapier to connect it with whatever tool works best for you. So we're going to start off with creating what's called a zap, and a zap is basically one of those workflows. So just click on the Make a Zap button. And then what Zapier will do is it will ask us for a trigger. Now, in Zapier, there are two different types of things that can happen. First of all, you have a trigger and an action. Now, the trigger is basically the event that happens that basically starts the automation. Now, in our particular case, the trigger is when someone submits a form on our landing page. And from that point, we want to start certain types of automations. So in my case, I actually want to send the information that was submitted inside of that form to Airtable. So first of all, we've got to configure the trigger, and the way that we can do that is just by typing in the name of the app that triggers the event. So in our case, that's Webflow. Now, my account is already connected, but if you haven't connected it yet, then just go ahead and do that, and you'll be able to select the actual website that triggers the particular event, and as soon as you've connected it, you'll be at this particular screen here. Now, if we look at the trigger event options, you'll see that you have form submission, new order, and updated order. Now, obviously, it's quite intuitive to figure out which one it is that we're going to be using. It is a form submission. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to start off by selecting the name of our site. So in our case, I want to select my personal website because that's where my landing page is. And now it's going to ask us for our form name. Now, one thing that I recommend doing before actually setting up the workflows is just testing that workflow one more time. So I'm back on my page now, and I'm just going to go ahead and submit it. So I am going to type in my email address. And as soon as that is done, I can now go back to Zapier, and now I can go and have a look at my particular form names. And you can see right at the top that the beginner course form pops up because that is what I named it. Now, if you don't name your field, you'll probably just have to go with email form. But again, if you have multiple forms on your page, you might get it mixed up with other forms. So I always recommend just naming your forms inside of Webflow. Now, once that is done, just click on continue. And then click on test trigger. And so as soon as you do that, you'll actually see what information was submitted by email. So you can see here what the name of the site was, what the date was, what the data email was, so what was the email that the person submitted, and what was the name of the form. Now, because I'm only asking for someone's email address, it only has that, but obviously you can add whatever other fields you want to your form, and the responses from that form submission will then be listed in here. So now that we have done that, now what we want to do is we want to set our action. And the action that we want to set is we want to send that information that our customer submitted to Airtable. So again, similar process. We want to start off by picking the app. So I'm just going to type in Airtable. And now we need to choose our action event. Now again here we have two options. We have create record and update record. Now the one that we want to work with is the create record field. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And now again, I just want to connect it to my account. And now what we want to do is we want to select our base, and the base is basically the name of the overall Airtable base that you collected. I don't know if there's any other word for it. So in my case, it's my Finlayson.com base, and then you want to select your table. Now your table is the column that you have inside of your Airtable base. So in my case, it's called Beginner's Course Lead. And then what I want to do is I just want to go ahead and select that. So I've got that down there. And now what you'll see is that it will open up some different fields. Now the only field that I really need to populate is the email field. So all I need to do is just click into it, and what you'll see is I can actually just manually type in different values, or more usefully, you can actually select fields that were submitted in any of the previous steps. So in our case, we only have one previous step, which is a form submission inside of Webflow. And you can see from that test record that there is my email address. So all I need to do is select that, and then I can click on continue. And then once I'm here, all I need to do is click on test and continue. And now if we go back into Airtable, we can see that a new record was added with the email address of my particular website visitor, as well as the date and time when that record was submitted. So all you need to do then, before we wrap things up, is turn on the Zap, and then just rename it to Beginner Course Leads, or whatever it is that is more applicable to your particular project. So now I actually want to show you what happens in real time when someone submits their email address to your landing page. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump in here. I'm going to add another email address, which in my case is connor+2@gmail.com. Now as soon as I submit it, you can see that it automatically gets added to my record inside of Airtable, and that is basically the most simple workflow that you can set up inside of Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. And that is pretty much it. So obviously you can expand on both the form fields that you collect, the designs of your landing page, and all of those types of things. But the most important thing about this video is that if you get an understanding of how you can work with each of those tools, then you'll be able to expand on that in the future. And those tools can be used to build things like the Unicorn Factory and a whole bunch of other fantastic platforms. And it basically works off the foundations of Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. So I made this particular tutorial for anyone who is brand new to the tools. So if you have never used it before and you're interested in giving this a try, then I'd highly recommend just sitting down with this particular video and going through each individual element. Now, as soon as you have managed to build the landing page, as soon as you have managed to automate the workflow in Zapier, then start using different resources that are, again, I'll link in the description down below, to expand on what you've done. Because as soon as you get to a certain point where you feel like you're making good progress with it, it'll become a lot easier to start jumping into some of the more complex workflows. Now, obviously, if you want to see what kind of workflows you can set up beyond just a basic workflow like that, then I'd recommend checking out some of the other videos in my channel. I've got some that are quite advanced where I use multiple different tools, and that will give you kind of an idea of how far you can take things. And also, if you do want me to make that Webflow, Airtable, Zapier beginner course, then submit your email address on that landing page. I'll leave the link in the description down below. And if we get enough people, I might just go ahead and build it. Other than that, I hope that this tutorial gets you going with no code. It can be life-changing. You can end up building platforms that can change both your life and the lives of others. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for sticking around for the entire video, and I'll see you back here for the next one.